post today about creepy things that kids have said. I love reading these. Every now and then I come across like a post of something like this, and I just love reading it. If you really don't like this combination or you just don't get it, then please don't watch this video. So let's get started. I was with my sister, her husband, and their 2-year-old daughter. We were talking about loved ones that had recently passed. My father had died sometime recently. My brother-in-law went and grabbed a picture of his mother, who had died in a car crash when he was 6, to show me. When my niece saw the picture, though, she started laughing. We asked her what was so funny, and she looked at us and said, "That's my special friend who sings to me." I still shiver a bit just thinking about it. Go back to sleep. There isn't anything under your bed. He is behind you now. Still haven't gotten over that one and shiver at the memory. Walking past an old cemetery, my then 3-year-old son casually said, "My brother is in there." When I reminded him that he didn't have a brother, he said, "No, Mama, from before, when the other lady was my mommy." I was tucking in my 2-year-old. He said, "Goodbye, Dad." I said, "No, we say goodnight." He said, "I know, but this time it's goodbye." I had to check on him a few times to make sure he was still there. My sister got hit by a drunk driver in April, and it totaled her car. She had my 4-year-old nephew and my infant niece with her. When my mom arrived at the hospital, my nephew asked her if he would thank the big guys. "What big guys?" she asked. "Grammy, the big guys that were in the car with me when it got loud and scary, and they hugged me with their arms and kept me safe. Even the insurance adjuster cannot explain how either child escaped with not a scratch." When my cousin was 2 years old or so, her mom got pregnant again. One day she went to hug her mom's belly and said, "Little brother's sick." A few days later, she had a miscarriage. When my son was small, I was talking to him about growing potatoes. I described how you bank up the earth around them as they grow, and he said, "I used to do that when I was an old man." Getting my 2.5-year-old daughter out of the bath one night, my wife and I were briefing her on how important it was she kept her privates clean. She casually replied, "Oh, nobody scroofs me there. They tried one night, they kicked the door in and tried, but I fought back. I died, and now I'm here." She said this like it was nothing. "Why are you crying? There's a bad man." "What bad man?" "There." He points behind me at a dark corner of the room. The lamp on the bookshelf next to that dark corner falls off as soon as I turn to look. He slept in our bed that night. Some of these are really funny, by the way. I'm trying not to laugh because that's not very relaxing, but I think some of these are really funny. My 3-year-old daughter stood next to her newborn brother and looked at him for a while, then turned and looked at me and said, "Daddy, it's a monster. We should bury it." My mother was babysitting my daughter while I was at a doctor's appointment and said, "Oh no, Grandma, Mama's not coming anymore today. She was in a bad accident. She can't come get us." I had indeed been in an accident that almost killed me at that exact time. None of my family had yet been notified. My sister Haley was born exactly 2 months after our great-grandmother died. One day, Haley Yes, it was her 95th birthday. When we tried to reason with her, she started crying, saying that her real name was Irene, my granny's name, not Haley. This lasted all day, and the next day she didn't remember anything. I was sound asleep, and at around 6 a.m. I was woken up by my 4-year-old daughter, by my 4-year-old daughter's face, inches from mine. She looked right into my eyes and whispered, "I want to peel all your skin off." The backstory here is that I had been sunburned the previous week and it was starting to peel. However, in my sleep-addled state, it was pretty terrifying for a few seconds. I think is funny, but it is, aside from the fact that her skin was peeling because she was sunburned, it's still pretty terrifying when your kid says that. My 4-year-old son and I were waiting for our food at Panera. While we stood there, he started rubbing my belly and talking to it. I asked him what he was doing. He said that he was talking to the baby. I informed him that I was not pregnant, and he said, "There is a baby in your belly. I just saw it crawl across the floor and climb up into you." Just today, my 4-year-old son told me, "I think we live in a pretend world and someone is playing with us." I asked him what he meant, and it got even weirder. "Well, it seems like someone does things to us, but we can't see them because we are in this world and they are not." My 4-year-old has an imaginary friend named John. He's had him for a while, but a few months ago he came to me completely serious and said, "Big John said he loves you," and then walked away. Now he has always referred to him as his buddy John. For example, my buddy John and I. My grandfather's name was John and everyone used to call him Big John. He passed away when I was 6 years old. We lived with him at the time of his passing, and he was such a huge part of my life. I've never referred to him as Big John or even John when speaking about him, always just Grandpa. My sister described her imaginary friend, saying, "He sits on my bed and waits for his mom. He's not allowed to go home by himself because of his arm." I asked what happened to his arm, and she said, "His mom ran him over when he was drawing with chalk. That's why he's always crying, because he doesn't like being dead." Gosh. My 5-year-old asked me when he's going to be 23. I told him in 18 years. He replied, "Well, I hope I don't die again, because that's how old I was the last time I went to heaven." My family has recently moved to a new home in a new country. It was a well-furnished apartment, and in our bedroom was a painting that looked like hair free-flowing in the air. It wasn't a pleasant or soothing painting, but I was trying to make peace with it. My son was 2.5 years old then. One day, I was settling him down for an afternoon nap in my bedroom when he said, "I don't want to sleep in this room." I asked him why, and he said, "This painting looks at me and tries to talk to me, and I don't like it." My mom told me that when I was a kid, around the age of 4, I would go to my great-grandmother every day to spend some time with her, and every time I was going home, I would say to her, as a good religious child, "God be with you." But one time when I was leaving, I told her, "Go with God." According to my mom, my mom corrected me, but I insisted in saying, "Go with God." That night, my great-grandmother died. Oh, this one's really sad. I have had multiple miscarriages. My daughter, "I met your babies that died in my dream. They want you to know that you're a good mom." waking up with nightmares almost every night for a month or two. I asked what she wanted for breakfast, and she told me she wanted to share it with the dead baby in her closet. I thought she meant one of her dolls, but when I pulled them out, she said, "No, not a doll. The dead one that sleeps on the closet floor at night." We were driving down a dark, snowy highway late one evening, final stretch of a 16-hour-long road trip. My son, who was around 4 or 5 at the time, was in the back seat and becoming a bit restless. He suddenly covered his face with a blanket and announced loudly, "I don't want to get glass on my face." A few moments later, a pickup truck towing some snowmobiles pulled out in front of a tractor trailer. A few cars in front of us and got hit, spinning out into the median. Fortunately, we avoided it. On a flight with my son, the plane took off and hit a couple bumps. The passengers were being somewhat quiet when my son yelled, "We're all gonna die." My 3-year-old son was softly singing while he was coloring. I stopped to listen, but I had never heard the song before. I asked where he learned it, and he said, "The lady in my bedroom sang it to me." When I was about 4, my mom found me in the bathroom with all my Barbies, making them float face down in the bath. When she asked what I was doing, I replied, "The man in the wardrobe told me if I didn't do it, it would be my turn to swim face down." My 6-year-old came home from school one day, bursting through the door with tears streaming down her face. "I miss my other family," she said. "What other family?" I asked, thinking she may have been talking about her grandparents or other friends or relatives. "My alien robot family," she explained, continuing to explain that she lived with them in the sky before she came into my tummy. She chose to come down because she was angry with them and chose our family, but now she missed them and wanted to go back for a visit. A huge thunderstorm one night. My son, about 4 at the time, put his hands on the sliding glass doors and said, "Oh God, don't take me, I'm too young to die." He looked back at my mom. "Take Grandma, she's old." That's honesty for you. Last year, my daughter kept crying and telling me I was going to die at 33 like my dad. I never told her or remember telling her anyone while she was around that my dad died when he was 33. Well, I'm 33 years old, and I have to say I've been living carefully this year, hoping to make it until next month when I turn 34. The other week, I was reading my 2-year-old daughter a bedtime story. When we finished, we were talking about way home to Alabama from Texas, and my son was in the back seat. And he said, "Mommy, who's the man in the back seat with me?" It was just us two, no one else with us. I asked him to describe him, and he said, "He's just black with red eyes. He's scaring me." So I pulled over and out his seat in the front and put his seat in the front with me. And he said the man looked like he wanted to eat me when I moved him. So there's that. My son always says odd things. Usually they're funny, but this one threw me for a loop. He is 8. I was telling him how much I love him and thanked for being in my life. He said, "I didn't choose this life. I couldn't control how it began, but I can control how it ends." My niece drew a picture of a man in her room that she kept telling her parents about. He had 2 different colored eyes and one was gray. When asked why it was gray, she responded, "Because he can see the storm coming." My 6-year-old nephew told my brother that everyone on earth was a figment of Jonah's imagination and that when Jonah wakes up, we'll all disappear. When asked who Jonah is, he replied, "He's the one who sleeps, the dreamer in the dream." Made my skin crawl the first time he told me. My 3-year-old daughter holding her baby brother for the first time, so I shouldn't throw him in the fire. It's kind of funny. My youngest, now 5, started talking super early, like full sentence talking. Everyone was shocked by how well he talked for his age. So at 1.5 years, he would tell me he begged God to let me be his mommy. He would say things like, "I was an angel in heaven and I had another mommy, but I wanted you. I'm so glad God let you be my mommy." We weren't super religious at the time and I just hadn't found a church, so it was really random to hear him talk about God, heaven, and angels, especially before my other kids actually learned about religion. I had just taken a pregnancy test that came up positive, confirming I was pregnant with our 4th baby. I was pretty freaked out and a little surprised and had to keep a straight face because we had company at the time and my husband didn't even know I was taking it. I leave the bathroom and sit on the couch. My oldest son, barely 5 years old at the time, comes over to me acting giddy and goofy, and as soon as everyone is out of the living room, says to me in a whisper voice, "Mom, I know." Me, having not said a single thing about it, didn't know what he was referring to. "Know what?" I say back with a smile, thinking he's just being goofy. "That there's a baby in your belly," he whispers with a huge grin and runs off. I felt like I had seen a ghost. To this day, I have no clue how he could have known that when I myself had just found out minutes before. When I asked him later how he knew, he responded, "I just knew." When my youngest daughter was about 2 or 3, we were just talking and she said, "I died all by myself." I asked her what she was talking about. She said, "Not when you was my mommy, when I lived with my old mommy. She had brown skin and so did I. The spider bit me and I died all by myself." She's deathly afraid of spiders still and she's almost 13. My 4-year-old son said, "Daddy, I want to drill into your tummy, crawl inside, and eat your dinner." A little neighbor kid I used to babysit was quietly playing with his toys when, without looking up, he said to me, "You look so different now." I had to ask him what he meant. "You mean how different I look with makeup?" And he said, "No, a long, long time ago. A long, long time ago." He seemed frustrated, like he couldn't find the right words. He then looked up, studied my face, and said, "Well, not that different. You're still pretty." It was the strangest compliment I've ever received. When my son was 2, I told him to be careful when he was jumping around. He said, "It's okay, Mom. Grandpa George is watching me." My dad passed away when my son was 2 months old, and we hadn't really talked about him. This one makes me laugh. I regularly babysit 2 girls, 3 and 5 years old, both blonde with huge blue eyes and big smiles. They are the creepiest people I have ever met. Once, after I picked them up from daycare, I tried to get them excited for dinner, seeing as they don't normally eat that much when I'm there. I asked them in an overly excited voice, "Hey guys, what do you want for dinner?" The eldest looks at me, runs away, and hides behind a corner. Sticking her head out, she whispers, "I want skinned babysitter." Oh my gosh. My 5-year-old, "Mom, I need you to throw away 2 of my Barbies." Me, "Why?" Her, "Because they looked back at me." When our dog died, without us yet having properly attempted to explain death, our then 2-year-old said all her thoughts left her body. Okay. I work at a summer camp, and one day I was playing with this kid who was jumping off of things and onto me. I said, "Hey, be careful. If you kill me, I can't play with you anymore." He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "No, but I can play with you." On the playground, my daughter points to the swing next to her. "Mommy, come push my ghost friend Flossie." Flossie was my great-grandmother who passed before I was born. You hear those stories a lot about little kids whose imaginary friend is like a deceased grandparent or great-grandparent that they'd never heard of before. My child would talk to the bathroom wall to her imaginary friend. When I asked who she was talking to, she said the boy from the coal mine. We had a mine shaft running next to our house. My friend's 7-year-old kid pretended to put me in jail. Our conversation went something like this. "What did I do? Forget to brush my teeth? Didn't do my homework? No, you murdered a 23-year-old woman while she was jogging in the early morning." My 5-year-old son, out of the clear blue sky, tells me while we're snuggling for bedtime, "Mom, when you die, after the funeral, I'm going to take you back home with me. I will chop off your head and shake out your guts. Then I will put it on the table by my bed so I can look at your face before I go to sleep and always remember that I really love you." A little serial killer-ish, but it shows how deep he loves his mommy. My daughter, about 5 years old at the time, riding with me in my truck, a gnat, mosquito, bug of some kind, is buzzing around her and bothering her, so she's complaining about it, so I told her to just swat it. She visually follows it until it's against the passenger window and quickly smashes it with her hand. She then turns to me with the strangest look in her eyes and says, "That was my first time killing something." When her father asked why she had done some particularly demented thing, my friend's daughter answered, "I don't know. I'm not driving this thing. I'm just along for the ride." When my nephew was 5, he offered me a cookie. When I reached out to accept it, he pulled it away from me and told me he wasn't offering it to me, but to the person standing behind me. There was no one else there. To our 3-year-old son, "What would you do if we had another baby?" Our son, "I'd kill it." This wasn't creepy for me, but was 3, she told me she had played with a dog before in her room. She said the dog was brown, tan, and white. I had to put down my husky 2 weeks before my daughter was born, same exact color. She didn't know at age 3 that I had had a dog those colors. My triplets once told me we used to hear a man talking to us in our old house, but we could never find him. My 8-year-old daughter last year told me, "Mom, I love you and all, but sometimes I don't think you're you." It completely caught me off guard, so I asked her what she meant by that, followed with, "Of course I'm me, honey, who else would I be?" Well, sometimes I feel like my real mom was taken away and you are just a creature wearing her skin. My niece was sitting on the couch with a weird look on her face. Her mom asked her what she was thinking about, and she said, "I'm imagining the waves of blood rushing over me." My little cousin once told me he wished he could cut off my hand so that he could hold my hand even when I wasn't there. That's actually kind of sweet. I woke up to find my 3-year-old son lying in bed next to me. I asked how he got in my bed, and he said he came to protect me from the light eyes that were standing over me while I was sleeping. I'm a nanny for a toddler who's still learning to talk. As we walked through our local cemetery, which is normal in our neighborhood, she pointed at the area above the graves, saying, "People, look, people," over and over again. In the middle of the night, my little sister turned to me and said, "Do you hear them talking?" But it was dead silent. I have a much younger cousin that always called his parents by their first names. When he was about 3 or 4 years old, he started talking about his real parents that were killed in a car accident. My aunt and uncle are his biological parents. He was an uneasy baby too, and my dad often looked at him and would say he doesn't want to be here. I used to work at a daycare that was adjacent to a large cemetery. Sometimes the kids would gather at the fence and stare into the cemetery, talking about a little boy they wanted to play with. As it turns out, the part of the cemetery that bordered that fence was the same part where all the kids and babies were buried. It really freaked out some of the girls that worked there. I have a 3-year-old daughter. She tells me that a red man comes into her room at night through her window. She said he hurts her and stares at her while she is in her bed. I have no idea where she would get the materials for this story. I've locked her window for her and pulled the blinds, all in an attempt to convince her that no one is getting in through her window. Sometimes in the morning she'll say, "It didn't work, Mama. Consequences got in last night again." At my grandmother's funeral, my then 2-year-old daughter crawled up on the kneeler and patted my grandmother's chest, turned around and looked at my dad and said, "Grandma's happy." My youngest of 3 boys, at 3 years old, just asked my wife, "Mommy, it would be better if you only had 2 sons, wouldn't it?" We were on a boat on vacation, and my 4-year-old cousin got really close to me and whispered in my ear, "I want to be a doctor so I can watch children die." My son told me about a dead woman with blue skin, no hair, and black eyes who supposedly lived in our old apartment. He said he watched her follow us outside and tried to get in our car, but there was no room, so she stood outside and watched us leave while waving goodbye. I work with kids on the autism spectrum. One of them said, they can see us, but we can't see them. My daughter, aged 3, woke me up in the middle of the night. Mama, do you hear that breathing? I told her that was me breathing. She said in a low voice, no, Mama, be very quiet and listen. I didn't hear anything, but we slept with the lights on the rest of the night. One night, when my daughter was 2 years old, she woke and could not get back to sleep. I told my husband to stay in bed, and I took our daughter on my lap under a blanket in a chair. We were both a bit drowsy when she suddenly raised up her head and said, hello, towards the wall where the door was. As my heart started racing, she continued to have a little conversation as if she was on the phone with someone, her face towards one spot. She stopped when I called my husband. Freaky as hell. I jokingly asked, what's the best way to get a girlfriend? The 7-year-old's response, tell her to be my girlfriend or she'll never see her parents again. Playing tea party, little ones keep passing me cake. I dutifully eat each piece she passes me. It was poison, you died. Oh, okay then. She then proceeded to chop me up, mix my chopped parts with some spice in a pot, and then serve the resulting stew to her mother. I was babysitting a family's friend's kid, and it was just the two of us in the home. She looked around and whispered to me, we're not alone in this house. When my youngest was about 5 years old, I asked him why he stole his sister's dolls and hid them. He told me that the little old lady told him to do it. I said, what little old lady? His response, the one that talks to me all the time, Mommy. There was no old lady ever in our home. It freaked me out a bit. 5-year-old, Mommy, when you die, I want to put you in a glass jar so I can keep you and see you forever. To which the 6-year-old responds, that's stupid. Where are you gonna find a jar that big? My 3-year-old daughter was in the bath playing with her toys with me and laughing. Suddenly her face deadpans. She looks me in the eye and tells me in a serious little voice, Mommy, if you bit and ate all my fingers off, I wouldn't love you anymore. My little cousin said her imaginary friend, Chucky, told her to kill her dad. It turns out they used to have a pool in their backyard that was covered up after the last owner committed suicide. His name was Chewy, but my little cousin couldn't pronounce it, so she called him Chucky. My 3-year-old son said, I like you way more than my last mommy. My son said, I saw Grandpa last night. He was out fixing the window by my room. Grandpa had been passed for years before he was even born. They never met. It was creepy, but knowing my uncle, he would have been checking up on the kids to make sure they were okay. My old dad died, so now I have you. You are my new dad, my son said to my husband. We were walking in town when I was 2 years old on a Sunday, and the church started ringing. I'm guessing that means the church bell started ringing. I screamed to my mother, listen, Lucifer is singing, not knowing who that was or even being religious. Freaked my mom out and everyone around. This is a story that my mom told me when I was little, around 3. I was walking down a street with my mom when suddenly I yelled that I didn't want to go into a store because there were bad guys, so my mom ended up not going. She told me that later on the news, it said that there was a robbery in that same store right around the time we passed there. When I was 4 or 5, I would regularly say things like, "Grandma's calling," before the phone would ring. The phone would ring moments later and it would be my grandma, stuff like that. But the one that really threw my mom for a loop was when I woke up one morning asking if my cousin would lose her arm. My mom didn't think much of it until my aunt called later that morning to say that my cousin fell off her bike and broke her arm. My mom just stared at me. My son's abuelita, grandma in Spanish, passed away when he was 6. While I was driving him to school one morning, not long after, he out of nowhere says to me, "Mommy, everyone says that abuelita passed away, but last night she came to see me and she was holding me and rocking me." I truly believe that she came to see him because she loved him so much. Alright, I think I'm going to leave it there. There's only about 10 more, but my battery is dying and I want to finish this before it craps out of me. So, I found it really interesting to read these. I always think there's a recurring theme where a lot of these are kids seeing supposedly dead people. And, I mean, I'm not overly religious. I think I'm more spiritual, but I definitely believe that that can happen, that kids are a lot more susceptible to it than we are. But it's strange because a lot of these stories are told by people who experienced this as a kid